Everybody, I'm attorney Chris DeBari. Welcome to my weekly presentation called Legalese, where I like to discuss legal matters and things that are relevant to what I do for my clients. As you know, I'm a personal injury attorney. I've been practicing personal injury law in the Tampa Bay area and representing the people of the Tampa Bay area for the past 20 years. If you happen to like what you hear today, please feel free to share it, to like it, and to comment below. And also, you can go to my YouTube page, Legalese, and watch some of the other videos that I produced. Now, as far as this evening's video is concerned, somebody had asked a very important question, and I kind of threw it out there for people to, tell me what sorts of answers to questions or what kind of questions they'd like to have addressed on the show. And one of my former clients and friends put a very good question out there, and that had to do with whose insurance covers you if you're driving someone else's car. Now, that is an interesting, very important question, and there are some very good answers to that. So it really sort of comes back to an important question, a very basic question with insurance coverage, and that question is, does the insurance follow the person or does the insurance follow the car? So the answer is sometimes one, sometimes the other. Remember, in law, it's usually not going to be an exact answer. You're going to have some analysis and you're going to have a couple of different situations. But for the most part, the answer is both. Although insurance tends to follow the car in more instances, but there are some times where it follows the person itself. Typically speaking, we find that we're in a motor vehicle accident, we're driving our own car, where the accident happens, perhaps family members in the car. So for the most part, your insurance policy is going to cover things that happen in your own car. It's going to cover the no-fault benefits are going to apply to you and your family, could possibly apply to a passenger if they don't own a car of their own and don't insure a vehicle or should insure a vehicle that they own, and they don't live with a resident relative that owns a car or insures a vehicle themselves. So typically speaking, your own policy is going to cover things that happen in your car. And that's usually the way the policies are written to address your vehicles or your substitute vehicles, rental cars, and so forth. So one example of the type of coverage that is going to cover you in your car is going to be the no-fault benefits, as I discussed. However, no-fault benefits also follow the insureds if they're in other cars. So if you're involved in an accident, doesn't matter who's at fault, in someone else's vehicle, more than likely your own no-fault insurance is going to cover you. And additionally, your passengers in your own car, if you were to be in an accident, they will probably go on their own no-fault benefits through their own family's policy, through their own policy. But if they don't have either of those, then they can go through the policy of the owner of the host vehicle, meaning the person driving the vehicle that they were in. That's pretty important. Now, you and your passengers are covered under your policy if injured in your car, and that's the no-fault benefits. And of course, you carry bodily injury insurance, which is intelligent because you know to do that, because I've told you that in the past. So if you're carrying bodily injury insurance, as you should, then you're also covering people who are injured by your car. And that's going to be under your policy. It's your car and hopefully your bodily injury liability. And of course, your car insurance, more than likely, particularly if you have a newer vehicle, will have comprehensive and collision insurance, which will cover only the vehicle. Hopefully you have that in place. And in case the other driver has no insurance or is carrying an inadequate amount of property damage insurance to fix your car, then you can fall back on your own policy. You'll pay a deductible, but your insurance company will go after the other insurance company of the at-fault driver in what is called a subrogation action, and they will get your deductible back, which is good. Now, the interesting question is, what happens if you are injured or you perhaps cause an accident in someone else's car? Typically speaking, if you are driving another person's vehicle, you are probably going to be one or of two different types of driver. You're either going to be a permissive driver, meaning a non-family member of somebody who owns a car who's allowed to use the vehicle, or you're going to be a non-permissive user. And non-permissive users are generally people that take a car without somebody's permission. And there are situations where a non-permissive user may not be able to avail themselves of the vehicle owner's insurance policy. So if you were to borrow somebody's car, and this is really a lesson to anybody that is allowing people to drive their vehicles, it's not a really good idea. And the reason is this: if I were to borrow your car and I were to take it out and I were to cause an accident, the accident's my fault, then your insurance is going to be the primary insurance. Even though I drove the car, it's still your car. You let me borrow it. So your bodily injury liability is going to apply and your property damage liability is going to apply, not mine. Mine might apply as spillover insurance in case there isn't adequate coverage under your policy. Then if I have a policy, then my policy will kick over sort of as overflow. But if I don't have insurance and you let me borrow your car and I crash your car and I hurt people or cause property damage and I don't have insurance and your insurance is not adequate to meet everyone's needs of people that have suffered harms and losses, then what's going to happen is you become personally liable. So remember, and this is a very, very important thing to always remember, to the extent you are not covered by insurance or enough insurance, you then become self-insured for everything that is owed above and beyond what your insurance is obligated to pay under the policy. Another interesting thing is, what about family members? And your own, this isn't family members driving another vehicle, but what if family members are driving your vehicles that you own? Well, as long as you list your family members on the policy, then the coverage should be guaranteed. But, and we see this a lot in Florida, we see this with a couple of substandard carriers that like to try to void people's coverage because they didn't list everybody in the house of driving age on the policy, sometimes whether or not they're of driving age or they have a driver's license at all. But the Florida insurance policies generally require that you disclose all of the people who live in your household that are of driving age, whether they have a license or not. And the insurance companies argue that they have the right to make an underwriting decision based upon all the facts, and they want to know who the people who might drive the car in the house are. Unfortunately, you run into some disreputable insurance agents who are trying to sell policies and may try to talk someone out of listing all of the potential drivers of the vehicles because it may lower their premium. Because remember, you have teenagers on your policy, very likely going to be paying a higher premium than if you didn't. So there's an incentive for unscrupulous agents that want to sell policies, and perhaps even unscrupulous drivers, to not list the drivers or the potential drivers in their household, usually teenagers. The problem with this is you get into an accident, and in the course of investigating the claim, the insurance company decides that, oh, well, this person should have been listed on your policy. Our underwriting decision would have been different on representation. They may try to void the policy ab initio, which means from the very beginning, meaning that the policy never existed. Here are your premiums back. We're not paying you anything. But once again, having teenagers on a policy will likely lead to higher premiums. So agents that write insurance policies connect people with insurance, and sometimes the drivers themselves may want a way around this. And of course, just like in all aspects of life, you're gambling. You're gambling with the possibility that they're not going to find out. You're hoping nothing happens, and if something happens, you're hoping they don't find out. That's gambling. Unfortunately, insurance companies are in a far better position to gamble and wind up not losing than you are. So be very, very careful. So just in summary, remember that your insurance is going to cover first people that are on your policy, family members that are on your policy listed as drivers or named insureds, or they are going to also apply to permissive drivers. And remember, the permissive driver, the person who you're letting borrow the car, if they have their own insurance, then their own insurance will be secondary. You see this sometimes with uninsured motorist coverage. Uninsured motorist coverage covers people that are on the insurance policy, generally when the accident happens in the cars under the policy. However, If you are the family member and you're on an insurance policy of another person, and you are, I'm sorry, I didn't say that very well. If you're a family member of somebody that owns vehicles and insures the vehicles, and they have uninsured motorist coverage that covers you on their vehicles, that uninsured motorist will also extend to you when you're injured in another host vehicle owned by somebody else with different insurance. Only their if they have it, will cover you first, and then yours will be secondary and cover you second. So those are some pretty important things to know. But it can be very, very dangerous sometimes to allow an uninsured driver to operate your vehicle. Um, in fact, in some states, a policy may not cover permissive drivers at all, but it just so happens in Florida that they do. But if you don't give, if you give permission for somebody to drive a car, obviously, hopefully they have insurance, but you want to make sure before you do that that they have some kind of insurance. The rental cars do that. They want to know what kind of insurance you have before they rent you a car. You should do that too, at least. And of course, if you have somebody that's a non-permissive driver, if you don't give somebody permission to drive your car and they cause an accident, they would not be covered under your policy. They shouldn't be. Example would be somebody steals your car and gets into an accident. And while damages to the other cars or property are not covered, you will likely, unfortunately, have to use your own collision to repair your car. So that's one of the unfortunate things that happens, where somebody steals your car, they get into an accident. While they may be responsible financially, you may be off the hook for injuries to other people, you're still going to wind up having to pay your own property damage on your vehicle. So just be aware of that, and that's a very important thing to know, because you don't want to let anybody that's dubious borrow your car, and certainly do everything you can to keep your car safe so that they cannot be broken into. There are certain exclusions. In fact, this is the last thing I'll come to tonight. There are certain exclusions that will apply to insurance policies, and usually these things are written into the language of the policy itself. In fact, most of the answers that people have to questions can be found in the policy language. Not that the language doesn't get a little bit confusing sometimes, but for the most part, you can read it or your lawyer can figure it out. But an example of excluded drivers would be people who drive with a suspended license. There may be insurance policies that will not provide coverage in a situation where an uninsured driver a driver with a suspended license is operating your vehicle. Another situation is if you have a personal policy, it may not cover if your car is being used for a business purpose. And here's something I want you to all pay attention to. We live in an age of small business. We're all entrepreneurs. We're trying to get out there, get our name out there, trying to get our image and our brand out there. Well, one of the things that people do to promote that is they will take graphic stickers of their business or advertisements, and they'll magnetically stick them to the sides of their car. Now, some people have permanent wraps on their car. Some people have removable magnets, signs on their car. Either way, if you have a personal policy that does not include a business use rider on it, then the insurance company can deny coverage even though the accident happens with your car, even though it happens when you have a policy for that car. If you have a personal policy and you want to have signage on your vehicle for your business, you have to contact your insurance company. You have to get permission from them to have a special business use purpose on the policy. Or if your vehicle is owned by a business, you can likely procure a business policy. But trying to do business in a vehicle with a personal policy, your insurance is going to be denied if the insurance company finds out about it. Now, obviously, it's at their discretion, but for the most part, insurance companies have to deny claims that they don't have to pay. Now, that's pretty much what I had to say for this evening. And I guess the lessons are really, look closely before you lend your car to somebody. Try to make sure that your car is safe and kept in a way and in place and garaged in a safe place so that nobody will steal it and go for a joyride or rob a bank or something worse. But, be very careful out there, because, you're going to be responsible, and your insurance policy is going to be responsible if somebody else borrows your car and they cause an accident. And premiums go up anyway. And if you get involved in an accident and there's a claim that has to be made against your policy, you use up your accident forgiveness. If you have it under like an Allstate policy, you may get a second chance, but for the most part, people don't. So try to be aware of that. Try to be aware of who's driving your vehicle, listing all of the relevant information on an insurance application so that you don't have your policy voided for misrepresentation. Because when the time comes that you need the benefits that your policies are designed to offer you, you won't have them, or you will have to fight tooth and nail and have an attorney go to bat for you, a PIP attorney or an insurance attorney, to get what you deserve. And it may not be a guarantee that that's going to happen. But anyway, folks, thank you very much for stopping in. And remember, like, share, or comment below if you like the information or you have anything you'd like to say. And please come and join me again next week, where we're going to talk about insurance coverages. And I'm trying to have my guest join me next week. So we're going to try that again. We're shooting to have a guest, and it's going to be at an earlier time. I think we're going to be doing next Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon. So if you're all feeling like you want to tune in, I would really love to have you as my guests. And otherwise, have a happy and safe evening. Thank you.